us already in the fantasy football season. And this is a crucial week, 2 more weeks till the playoffs. So you need a win here. And I'm going to give you 5 receivers you should start. Definitely heading into week 12. The first guy's Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. Kupp with a monster game versus Tampa Bay. And his best fantasy game of the season it was for Kupp. 11 catches, 145 yards on 13 targets. Kupp, he was getting open early and often in that game versus Tampa. I thought he was going to go for 200 yards in that one was Kupp. He was just finding his way, getting yards after catch. And this week he versus the San Francisco 49ers, whose defense is banged up. Goff and Kupp, they're starting to get the rhythm back once again together. And this week, Kupp, I think he could go for 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't think he'll go for 145. That was just a huge game. But I could see him have 100 yards and a touchdown. The Rams are at home. They're feeling good now, winning 2 in a row, especially with that huge victory on Monday Night Football versus Tampa. And they got things going. So Cooper Kupp, I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, if he cracks 100 yards with a touchdown in this one. So definitely start him. The second guy, CeeDee Lamb. He plays tomorrow night. Is Lamb and the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And CeeDee Lamb now, the last 2 weeks, he's bounced back after struggling when Dak Prescott went down. And Lamb, this guy's a bona fide stud, and he gets the job done now. 15 and 16 fantasy points in his last 2 games. He had a nice game versus Minnesota for 4 catches, 34 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion, and an amazing grab in the back of the end zone for CeeDee Lamb. So Lamb, he's, like I said in the other video, this guy seems like a 10-year vet the way he runs. He gets open. He's a nightmare for corners. This week he's got a good matchup versus Washington, even though I know he struggled last time versus Washington, but things are different. It's not going to be raining. It's not going to be wet. They're indoors. This Cowboy offensive line has improved a little, and the defense as well has gotten a little better. They got some guys back from injury, and I think Lamb, he could get open early and often versus this Washington secondary. So he's the second guy I'm going to start. The third guy is Darian Slayton of the New York Giants. Slayton, he's been quiet the last few weeks, but now coming off a bye week and a great matchup coming up for him versus the Cincinnati Bengals, who give up the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers. I could see Slayton go from 70 to 75 yards with a touchdown. Cincinnati, a lot of teams and receivers get open. He's the Giants' number 1. And the targets, they've been there for the most part, is Slayton. He's got 17 targets in his last 3 games and double-digit fantasy points in 2 out of his 3 games. He's more of a sneaky play if you play in a 3-receiver league or flex. But if you're in a basic league and you got tons of options, Slayton's not a guy you would start. But I think, like I said, 70, 75 yards and a touchdown, and he's going to have a good game as Slayton. The Giants, they're in playoff contention. Well, that whole division is. So this is a big game, and you need guys like Slayton and Shepard to make big plays. And I think in this one, we're going to see Slayton make at least 1 deep one or score a touchdown. So he's the third guy. The fourth guy is Tyler Boyd. We're staying in the same game. I know Joe Burrow's done for the season, and Finley's in at quarterback. And Boyd, he's the type of receiver I just believe it don't matter who his quarterback is. He's going to get open. He's going to run his routes. He's a tough cover. This guy's one of the better route runners in pro football. And this guy, he gets double-digit fantasy points every week, it seems like, is Boyd. The targets have been there. Like I said, I know Burrow is out, but they're still going to be trailing, I believe, most of the game. And he's going to get 8 or 9 targets a game is Boyd. So Boyd, I could see him having a decent ball game, 7 or 8 catches for 70 or 80 yards, and that's a good ball game in PPR leagues, 15, 16 points. And this Giant defense in the secondary, they give up the 13th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I think Boyd, he'll be all right, and he'll be a guy I'll start with confidence at my number 2 or flex receiver position. And the 5th and final guy is Devante Parker. Parker's a guy I thought his numbers would drastically go down since Tua Tagovailoa came in at quarterback, but Parker, he's only had 1 horrible game in Week 10 with 5 fantasy points, but Week 11 versus Denver, 6 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. I know Fitzpatrick came in at the end of that ball game, and he had a few catches off of him, but this week the matchup's amazing as well for Parker. He versus the New York Jets, who give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers, we just saw Keenan Allen have an insane game with 13 catches for 150 yards in that one. So I think Parker, he's good for a long ball. He's good for 80, 90 yards and a touchdown. And he's a guy I just can't bench versus the Jets. So I'm starting Devante Parker here heading into Week 12. So that's 5 wideouts I'm starting heading into Week 12.